But it is time for the Indie of the Week.
Ooh.
And this week actually is a suggestion via the medium of the Rotund one. So, what's that giggle for?
Rotund.
The Rotund one. Weebles wobble, but sometimes Warren will send us messages.
He will, yeah.
And he went, "Have you seen this?" And we went, "No." And he went, "You should have a look at this then, because it's
a very nice story.
It's an interesting story and a fascinating range as well, I suppose. So, if you want to know the full ins and outs of it, there is a Facebook post over at Impact Miniatures, which explains everything that has happened to bring them to this point, essentially. And Impact, if people aren't aware, Impact have been... The reason there's a Blood Bowl now from Games Workshop is because Impact...
They make about 1 billion teams a year.
These guys have been keeping the Blood Bowl community serviced for years. So if you were looking to pick up things like Willy miniatures or Wiley miniatures, whatever way that's pronounced, I think it's both. I think there is a Willy and a Wiley miniature. Anyway, if you were looking to pick up their teams, you could get them from Impact. They do 3D sculpting. They do a whole host. Most of this page is devoted to fantasy football teams, of which there are numerous. That's not the bit we're going to be looking at today, though, because we're fickle like that.
We may come back to it. We may come back to it in future.
Because we could literally just spend all our time in the teams for fantasy football and never get any further. But essentially, an old line, Heartbreaker miniatures from back in the 90s.
90s,
yeah. And a lot of people will know Heartbreaker. A lot of the sort of the sculpting collective from the Nottingham area did a lot of work for Heartbreaker. So the same sort of names that you would see connected to Games Workshop, Citadel, Marauder, who'd you call them, Grenadier, all of these sculptors who would ply their trade throughout the various sort of companies also did a lot of work for Heartbreaker. Unfortunately, it went away and was sort of defunct for a while until being picked up by, you know the name, Chris.
Yeah, so the sort of the Heartbreaker line was sort of the brainchild of Chris Bledsoe, who sort of bought it, as you say, in the late 90s, and created a range that was used by a lot of people, and it featured, as you can see here, sculpts from some of the best in the range. So you've got things like people like Tim Brown, Kev Adams in this mix. But the unfortunate thing was that Chris passed away, unfortunately, back in when he was trying to sort of get everything off the ground, and so the range felt like it was going to disappear, which was a massive shame. But his dad, Kevin Bledsoe, stepped in and basically got a hold of everything that Chris had ever done, which is these amazing miniatures from some of the most talented sculptors in the area, and then was talking with Impact's Thomas Anders and a whole bunch of other people about trying to bring it back. And so that's where ZN Miniatures came in. This was like an attempt to revive the range and get it back out there. Unfortunately, things sort of like stepped in the way, and ZN Miniatures didn't really get the sort of gain the ground that it needed to continue. And so the range almost languished for a little while. But the really nice thing about it was that Kevin wanted to do the best by his son, and so just didn't get rid of anything, which I think is a really cool thing. And means that we're not deprived of these sculpts. And so then what happened was, a couple of years after that, Kevin got in touch with Anders and Impact Miniatures. And from that point on, they were like, boom, right, let's see if we can bring all these miniatures back onto the tabletop. And so as in the Facebook post, which I will link down in the description if you can go and check it out, sent him a pallet's worth of molds and sculpts and old metal models and everything that then Impact picked through piece by piece, and they basically went, this is so cool, we are going to make sure we bring all of this back to the tabletop. And so a lot of people will actually remember back in 2018, we covered this on the Weekender, but Impact did a Kickstarter, which was called the Lost Minis Project. Now, the Lost Minis Project was was dealing with a whole range of different companies that had produced miniatures that were then no longer available mostly on different web stores. But one of those ranges was this particular collection. And so Patrick Keith and some of the other miniatures from Clint Staples as well got kind of built into this. And this enabled Impact to finish off everything that Chris had initially planned for this larger collection from Heartbreaker and ZN. And so it was a really awesome way for the legacy, effectively, of this range to be continued and brought back to the tabletop. And now it's available forever, effectively, through Impact, which I think is an absolutely amazing story.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that always hits us as wargamers, and we talk about this quite a lot on XLBS and everything as well, and a lot of people talk about it within the community, is that it's like, oh man, there's this range of miniatures that I wish was still around and all that kind of thing. And this is a testament to people's will to make sure those kind of creative outlets don't get lost forever, or, you know, only exist as eBay purchases and that
at
kind of
ridiculous
thing.
Prices.
At ridiculous prices, yeah. And yeah, it's just a really nice story. And as you can see here, the miniatures themselves are stunning. They have that really nice kind of old hammery style vibe to it. And a lot of this stuff would be very, very applicable to a lot of kind of Warhammer Fantasy style battles if you want to dive into it. There's a lot of stuff in here as well that's been designed for role-playing games and all sorts of other things as well.
Yeah, the Heartbreaker used to do Earthdawn.
That was the one, yeah. So,
which was a terrible game. I had a friend who loved Earthdawn, but I could never get into it.
Unfortunately.
But the miniatures are lovely.
But yeah, the miniatures are lovely. They've got that really sort of over-the-top feel to them, which I think is quite nice. We were talking about this kind of thing when we've looked back at stuff from like War Games Foundry and when we were looking at Grenadier as well. Just character built into the stores.
Right there. Kev Adams' Goblin and Orc sculpts are pretty much responsible for the way we see goblins and orcs in tabletop fantasy gaming, because he did so much. They call him the Goblin Master for a reason. It felt like anybody who bought a goblin between like the late 80s and now has bought a Kev Adams sculpt. That's all there is to it. It's even got his own website now. I'll have to look at that at some point in the future. But it means they also have a consistency across
that's very true.
5 different companies and 40 years. You know, you could pick these up and set them down beside some of the stuff he's sculpting today, and it will be seamless almost. So
it was one of the nice things hearing about, because there was a couple of times where Patrick Keith had actually talked about trying to replicate this style and things, and Keith had specifically said, I wanted to try and make it as true to the old lines as possible. Which I think is amazing.
So imagine this shiny new one right on the left is probably there to add, because it doesn't have the dating that the others do, which is 94, I think, for this one, 96 there.
But I love how chunky all these things are. Like you look at these and you're like, God, that's going to weigh a lot when it's on space.
Sweet lead.
I think it's really cool. One of the nice things is, like, obviously we can see all the fantasy armies and things that they did as part of Heartbreaker. But one of the cool things is, if you look over on the ZN page, Jerry, you can see some of the more quirky stuff that they've done.
Right.
So this kind of feeds into the role play side of things, where they did all these sort of Earthdawn miniatures and things. So you have the like really cool like dinosaur people and things, which I think is great. And true to form, this is a collection that has very tiny pictures.
No,
I couldn't do an old school range without tiny pictures, right?
Is it tiny, or is it just very far away? He's a dwarf as well. Dwarf paladin.
I think it's a combination of the two that's done that. But yeah, it's just this wealth of amazing and quirky different miniatures that you could use for your games. And as I say, like, because these were designed for role-playing games, they've got loads of character built into them and that kind of thing. You could easily pick some of these up and just slot them in alongside a lot of the more modern ranges, and you'd have, you know, a really nice and very unique character. Some of the ones that actually were sort of brought back and like really built on were the Ulfherde, which are like those the sort of were creatures, which I think are amazing. Really cool. Slightly confrontation-esque a little bit. Maybe not in the head, but with the rest of the model, I thought was kind of cool. But
weirdly, it was the head. I immediately went, yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. I was just thinking the armor was very confrontation, but very Rackham. But But yeah, there's some really nice little bits and pieces in there that are very different from what you might have.
You had me at dinosaur people, Ben.
There we go. Yeah, we know that the most important question to ever ask is, what's your favorite dinosaur? That's the
exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Didn't just do fantasy though, so there's also.
Nice bit of sci-fi.
ZN also did steampunk airships.
Ooh, steampunk.
So if you like your weird punk, you could. I mean, you could do some weird stuff with a billion suns with these.
You could do, yeah. That'd be kind of cool. Sort of going for like a steampunky billion suns.
Yeah. Messerschmitt bomber packs, monitor scouts, prowlers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's delightfully weird, and also very far away. I like that.
In the clouds, in the distance.
I like it. It's 4 massive brass balls.
Yeah.
Now we know where GW got their idea for their
the crab
dwarves from.
Yeah.
Fairly certain there should be something else here from ZN, which isn't on the ZN page. Weirdly, I have to scroll down here. No, maybe not. Maybe I'm freaking out at my old age.
It brought up an interesting thing that sort of came up in the comments as well, and the Facebook post and all that kind of stuff as well. Was that the guy who runs Impact was talking about how it would be really nice if like people continued legacies for ranges even after the original creators of these all passed away. And I think that's something that a lot of companies should like start to look at. I think. I don't want to sound too down in the dumps, but we've moved on quite a way since the 80s and 90s, and a lot of those sculptors who created those original ranges are, in their later years. Not nowhere near the grave, but in their later years. And so having things in place, I think, to be able to continue the lines of miniatures is a really good way to keep people abreast of where we came from. Because I think one of the nicest things is you can look at all the new Games Workshop stuff, but you want to see where it all began, and I think that's why people are so enamored by sort of old Hammer miniatures. And even within more modern ranges, I think it's nice to be able to look back at stuff that maybe Mantic did when they first came out, and then look at where Mantic are now. I think it's really nice to see that progression. And these miniatures, as you're seeing here, would be absolutely perfect for gaming right now. Most of them are going to be one piece. They're going to be easy to paint. The washes will make them pop as well because of all the metal detail and stuff. So, and
there's so many weird and wacky games these days that have, a low model count and miniature agnostic rule sets. So you can just go, well, I fancy playing this, and I'm going to use these guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these guys, these are in effect Wartime warbands, or something if you really wanted to go for it, or Frostgrave warbands. Characters for Rangers, Shadow Deep, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you could do whatever you wanted with these.
Dark Paladin.
They're fantastic. They're all so unique, aren't they?
Yeah.
Every single one of them. Because I didn't know that I needed a dual pistol Ratman until now. I really
Really? I'm shocked. I thought that would be
Gary's constantly hunting for dual pistols.
I know, you're right.
That's how Jared found Oakbound Studios. He's looking for black powder weapon wielding Ratman.
Yeah. But this goes back to the nice thing about this. They're all unique because this goes back to a time when you didn't have a large amount of models within armies. They weren't like hundreds of models big unless you were playing something like Historics. That's really cool. And that's the other thing that's really nice about this. I bet you could look through this range if you're a miniature collector of a certain vintage, and I bet you could look at this and be like, "Oh my god, I have
that
those."
Vintage. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I bet you'd be like, "Oh my god, I have that, and I wish I'd also had that." Well, awesome. Impact actually do all these, so you can go and get them again. Which I think
that's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. And it's nice to go onto something like Stuff of Legends and look at the old catalogs and look at the old ranges from various companies and go, oh, that was good. I remember that. I wish I'd had that. It's even better to actually being able to buy them.
Very much so.
And having Impact obviously deciding to continue the curation of the of ZN games to continue the sort of Heartbreaker legacy is great, because it would be so easy just to these could be warehoused and then when Kevin passed away then, so obviously his son had passed away years ago, but where he passed away recently, that if this hadn't have been arranged beforehand, auction maybe, scrapyard more likely, and that's a whole chunk of some really spanking miniatures just gone.
It was one of the things that the Impact said about this, that they were so surprised that Kevin didn't just get rid of the stuff, because a lot of times, a lot of things they use for businesses just end up in skips, or melted down or something, whereas where Kevin has actually done so much to continue his son's legacy.
How lovely.
So
I'm really loving the fact that it's still out there, it's still available for people, and definitely worth checking out if you fancy having a selection of miniatures, heroes, war bands, whatever it happens to be for various games. I mean, there's not a week goes by where we don't see another game where you're just going, well, all I need is half a dozen models of to play that, or some people do like the Growling Badger, whatever it was called, game, where you're Lords of Hell. You're going, well, I just need some demon-looking things to fight each other. And then you just go, all right, well, grand. Well, here's a bunch of really random-looking demon things that I'm fairly certain my opponent won't have.
No.
Pick those up for so.
You're not going to get confused on the tabletop.
No, you are not.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic to see. And well done, Warren, for spotting that. You little legend.
He's with us in
large legend.
He's with us in spirit, providing the indie of the week.
There we have
Just didn't get it shouted at you this week.
No, he didn't. Everybody's eardrums are secure for another week. Well done, you. Right, we're going to take a quick switch, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the news.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.